Hi Swifties, welcome back to my channel. I am the Taylor Swiftologist, and if you're new here, I make weekly thoughtful videos about Taylor Swift. I'm a journalist by trade and Swiftie by choice, and I like to take my organizational and analytical skills to dissecting the public life of my favorite pop persona, Taylor Swift, and I will be branching out into other pop culture content very shortly. I've been away for a week. I was in India at one of my college friends' weddings. It was an insane experience, to say the least. You can head to my Instagram to check out what I got up to while I was there. For everybody asking, in my community tab, I went to Delhi, Agra, and Udaipur, and it was truly one of my favorite vacations of my life. India is a beautiful place. I have so many friends from there, and I've been meaning to visit them for a long time, and finally I got to go, and it was so cool. Next time I go, maybe I'll take my camera with me and vlog, but there's just something about vlogging that I can't get into. But that is not the topic of today's video. Today's video is going to be me reacting to Taylor's kind of talk, her lecture, if you will, at the Toronto International Film Festival. Now, she is on the promo circuit. So the last video you saw from me, I was reacting to the Midnight's announcement. And now that we've had some time to let the dust settle, I am truly wondering, like, if we are going to be getting the kind of rollout that we got for prior, bigger, more commercial albums like 1989, like Lover, not like Reputation, because, you know, there will be no explanation, there will just be Reputation. But I am wondering, and I'm leaning towards we're going to be having a big ass moment with this album. I'm very curious as to what it's going to be about still. I have not really been keeping up with any of the theories or like the fan predictions or whatever, because they're always bullshit and they like never really come true, or they're just kind of like a little bit too harebrained or it's too simple for me to really kind of get behind. So I'm going to try and draw my own conclusions. Keep in mind that I have been basically unplugged for the last week. I've been on Twitter intermittently. I have not been like keeping up with what's been going on. I saw the photos of Miss Thing in her dress and I was like, I have to see what this is all about. It's giving very much Red era Taylor, like the blunt bang. It's so close to the eyebrow. The hair is looking really good. It looks brushed. It looks blown out, which is amazing, more than can be said for other hair appearances we've had as of late. But this is amazing. She's wearing custom Louis Vuitton. She is in a gown, darling. And she's still on her campaign to get All Too Well an Oscar. Now, should Taylor Swift be talking about her short film experience at the Toronto International Film Festival? I mean, you know, from a professional standpoint, probably not, but like, I'm sliving. I want her to be, you know, winning and making as many public appearances as she possibly can. I love it when she talks about her craft, although I'm not convinced that filmmaking is her craft, but you never know. And apparently, I think I heard that there's going to be another short film coming from Midnight, so I'm scared. All Too Well, the 10-minute version short film, was not really a short film, if I can speak my truth. It was a really long music video, especially because the dialogue was like improvised, not constructed. I thought that the way that she laid out the various chapters was kind of haphazard. It was shoehorning a short film into a music video. So I'll be curious to see what's going on. I'm going to be reacting to the full conversation that she had at the Bell Lightbox. So before we dive straight into it, this is going to be a long one. Please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave me a comment below and let me know what you want to see from me next if you're going to stick around. I know that a lot of you are watching and returning to watch and not subscribing. So please smash the subscribe button.
From a very early point in my career, I wanted to establish each album as its own era of sorts.
And the crowd goes wild because we love an era. Also, we have talked about how the pressure of creating a whole era and a distinct visual and sonic identity through every single album is a pressure that women have to shoulder so much more than men. This was discussed in Miss Americana, and I do wonder like how that kind of plays into her conceptions of doing the eras. I think she has a lot of fun doing it, but you know, I think this is where songs like The Man are born. She's so sick of running as fast as she can. And I always love to hear about the process. Like, work-related stuff is so interesting because I feel like these sit-down, long-form discussions of the craft are so rare and few and far between, and we're getting more of them, which is awesome for me because I don't care to hear her like do interviews gossiping and sitting about who she's dating. Like, I want to know the juice on how she got to where she was and what kind of creative skills and tools she sharpened in order to get there. So hearing that things are visually minded is not surprising to me because I feel like there are certain songs that you can tell she had a visual in mind for. I'm thinking of Ready For It for tour specifically. That to me was constructed specifically as like a tour opener. So that's like one example off the top of my head that I can think of. I think Love Story also probably had a very like visual minded thing behind it. Same with You Belong With Me. I mean, you can point to so many different moments on each of the albums. I mean, Red actually entirely is a visual concept. The color, it's astounding. And I'm rambling, so let's get back to it.
And I think that it's really something that I can only thank the fans for, that, you know, you can't really do things like that if people don't care and pay attention to it. So it was always a part of the process, establishing the visuals. And early on, when we would make music videos, the process was, you know, I'm 16, I'd reach out to a video director, and I'd say, hey, I think it would be cool if the concept was that we were like, you know, I'm in love with my best friend in high school, and he lives across the street, and like, but there's this cheerleader who he's dating, and then there's a football game that ends with a dance, and there's these signs. Like, you know, you come up with concepts, and over time, I started to take on more and more responsibility, and the more responsibility I took on creatively, the happier I was. So here we are.
That is so interesting to me, and I love to hear it, because I do wonder all the time, like, what her creative involvement in each project is. So I think that this is more often how pop stars work than not, which is you give a concept and then someone else kind of does the execution. So the legwork of it, like figuring out what the shot's gonna be, figuring out what the set is gonna be like, casting people for the production. It seems as though early on in her career, like, she had so much more going on, like with promo and kind of building her star and establishing her legacy and focusing on the like written craft of it all, that I'm sure she did not have the time to do like storyboards and mood boards for every single concept that she came up with, which is why there's some inconsistency in her visual discography, but I digress. Songs like I Knew You Were Trouble, the music video, for example, you can really tell that the director took a concept that she liked and ran with it, and she did not have too much input on it, because it is very similar to the Ride music videos starring Lana Del Rey, which was done by the same director only a mere few months before. So I think that we can avoid these kind of like similarities and visual overlaps when Taylor is more hands-on and direct with it. So I would be curious to know when exactly she started taking on more of those production heavy roles, and I'm so happy to hear that it's creatively fulfilling for her to do them.
What has your path through movies been? What films did you love growing up, and what images from movies still stay with you as a...
Not movies, not actress.
I think that it has fluctuated over time. I've always really loved certain films during certain phases I was in musically. Like, I made an album called 1989.
Heard of it?
Thank you for listening to it. I appreciate it. And I would watch John Hughes movies. I just watched 16 Candles and Breakfast Club all the time, just over and over.
16 Candles and Breakfast Club are great movies. You should watch them if you haven't already. And I feel like it really kind of makes sense how 1989 was born as an era through that visual lens. I would have loved to have seen those more referential visuals in the 1989 album campaign. Go watch The Breakfast Club or 16 Candles and imagine style being set to one of those like heartbreak moments in those movies, in a car with the window down, in suburbia. Like, you'll see what I'm saying. It could have been very more directly influenced. It's interesting to hear that there's some sort of symbiotic relationship to what she's intaking in her media diet while she's producing stuff and creating an output as well. Because 1989 has that real kind of like 80s movie euphoria, like that high adrenaline payoff, we kind of hear that in songs like New Romantics and Out of the Woods, and even All You Had to Do Was Stay, my favorite song.
This would happen throughout my career for different things. I remember the pandemic hit, and I was watching a lot of...
Sally
I remember
Rooney.
watching two
Normal People.
back-to-back Guillermo del Toro movies, Devil's Backbone and then Pan's Labyrinth. And so my whole world turned into folk tales and forests and mythical creatures, and I was just so dazzled by those films. And I'd always, obviously, like Shape of Water is one of my favorite films ever, but I hadn't seen those two very pinnacle films in his repertoire. And then I watched Rear Window, which I hadn't seen, which is embarrassing, but I hadn't seen it at that point, and it was very voyeuristic. It was very much like, you know, he's watching his neighbors, and like, he's a murderer. I haven't experienced that, but I did.
Some might say vehicular manslaughter.
I did experience combining some of those cinematic inspirations and films that I loved with, like, okay, so you end up with an album that is me telling stories from other people's perspectives in a very folk tale kind of...
a mix of Rear Window and Del Toro's movies in a way.
You know, if I had to assign, you know, the culprits cinematically, I would say it would be those three films.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, and
I would love to know. This is why I'm always begging for her to tell us like what she's reading, what she's watching, and what she's listening to at any given moment, because what she takes in is directly related to what she puts out. And that's also why I think she keeps a lock on what she's doing. It's kind of like giving the keys to the castle away, you know? Like, you don't want to share your specific inspiration or your reference points with the whole world. I'll be curious to see as this goes on if she gets into what she was taking in while creating Midnight.
Then the next record I was just non-stop watching Sense and Sensibility, the Ang Lee one, the Kate Winslet, just for an album called Evermore. It's just, I have very similar.
That makes sense. Evermore is very much more kind of like regal and grand and old-timey, right? Instead of folklore, which feels a little bit more contemporary and grounded in the present day, Evermore is like a time travel moment.
I think my obsession with, there was this, I don't know if it's actually something people talk about, but in my mind, there's this period of time in the 70s where you started seeing these romantic films where these two characters are so beautifully, intimately woven together, and then they just unravel the braid right in front of you, and you just can't believe it. Like The Way We Were and Love Story, Kramer versus Kramer.
I could listen to her talk all day. The way she's describing a relationship falling apart as the braid kind of untangling, it's beautiful. She's a writer, honey, first and foremost, and don't you ever forget it.
Yeah, and so those ones were ones that I think, because I love those films, just hitting those emotional touchstones that those films just punch me in the stomach and hit. And then I think in terms of modern films that I loved that probably lended themselves to making this film, I would say Marriage Story, really upsetting for months. I was not all right. And The Souvenir Part 1 and 2.
Oh yes, Joanna Hogg's
films.
Yeah.
Souvenir Part 1 and 2 is really kind of like a long slog movie to get through, and it's also very, if I remember correctly, realist, and I can kind of see how that and Marriage Story were the direct influences for the All Too Well short film. However, I mean, when we say short film, 10 minutes is like really too short, I think, to get like a full story together. And the story is told so well through song that it's kind of like pointless to adapt it visually unless you're adding something extra to it, which I guess was the point of making the 10-minute version of film. But I don't know. I just, in my mind, the best video adds to the story, right? It creates the story, it makes it more whole. Like with Look What You Made Me Do, you cannot separate the visual from the song. They are completely entwined forever and always, and everybody will remember those and instantly call to mind those images. All Too Well, the short film, doesn't have that same resonance for me, and I understand where she's like pulling these references from, but I just don't know if they were executed properly.
I had actually made the short film by the time I went and saw The Souvenir Part 2. And the fact that it's about this young woman who experiences this extreme heartbreak and despair and then makes something. It's just like, oh, that's exactly
speaking to you.
It's exactly.
It's so true.
So.
You mentioned the 70s. I heard that you also like John Cassavetes' films.
Yes.
Also big heartbreak, big emotion.
Yeah, and I just think I don't know, I just really love how he allows despair and human emotion to just play out. Yeah. It just is allowed to breathe and play itself out.
You see the loose ends.
Yes.
Right? It's not tied up.
You feel like you're really in that house with that fight going on, and it's just harrowing.
Yes. Well, the fight that you crafted here also feels that way, and I love how the music stops and you really begin to see their relationship kind of disintegrate.
Yeah.
And then come back together a little bit, but it feels like it draws on some of that same kind of spirit from those 70s movies.
Such a nice thing for you to say to me. I think you can tell a lot about people based on how they fight or argue.
Very true.
And I think with
how
this
do you
film,
fight, Taylor?
I went into it
in terms of Katy Perry, not fair. Not fair.
Having scripted out a few different scenes and knowing that I wanted to show one of them in depth and at length. And when it came time to shoot, you know, we filmed them breaking up. We filmed them falling in love, some of the dialogue with that. But I kind of, as we got closer to it, I was like, it's gonna be the fight. I think that we had scripted it out, but I had talked to Dylan and Sadie so much about what their intentions were and what exactly it is that's the catalyst for this fight, and why it's not about him just dropping her hand. It's about this entire just molecular structure where she feels out of place and he feels unequipped to handle that, and it all comes back to being in different places in their lives, having this huge gap of age difference between them. She's still got 1 foot in girlhood, 1 foot in this very adult world. His life is very cultivated. I just felt like we had talked so much about it, that I was dealing with such emotionally intelligent actors, and we talked so much about this, that when we actually shot, it ended up being, like, I think probably 92% of that scene is a oneer.
Really?
Yeah, we don't cut till the very end until he says, "Why don't look at me like that?"
A oneer? Okay, Martin Scorsese.
First time we cut. And we were just, my producer Saul and I were just at the monitors, just like there was like a death clutch as we're watching this, because we're like, oh my God, like we're injuring each other's arms at this point, like, but also trying not to make a sound, because we're just so in awe of how much we could trust these actors with every single bit of the scene, the story, the weight.
So much is in the right.
Wow, okay, I'm gonna pause and talk for a sec. First of all, the clanging of her dress, like hitting itself over and over, is really doing it for me. I love it. I'm living for it. I think this is so interesting to me, right? So we've gotten a lot of information in this very brief answer. I understand, like, we know what the story behind All Too Well is. She's literally just explained it for us. I think, again, I'd like to highlight that this is the brilliance and, like, the excellence of her songwriting, and something that I think, like, the swifties sometimes miss. It goes over their head. It's usually not about, like, what someone did or what specific instance triggered an emotion. Real life scenarios, real life situations, emotions, breakups, collapses, these happen organically, and they happen in a non-linear way. It's not like there's a natural cause and effect for every single thing that happens. It's kind of just like a kaleidoscope of things. She describes this relationship as like a kaleidoscope of memories, I believe, in the prelude monologue to the I Knew You Were Trouble music video. So love to see that she's being consistent still, again, after all these years. She's a truthful storytelling queen. I think that it's interesting that she felt that she was so emotionally connected to these actors and that she felt they were really doing it justice. I think Sadie Sink did an incredible job, and she really, to me, like, I felt that her performance was extremely emotive and very true to the protagonist, the source material. I got a really youthful Taylor energy about her, and I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was the kind of like wide-eyed innocence paired with this, like, kind of, like she said, adult knowingness, this preternatural talent that kind of puts her in leaps and bounds above other people, but also is not able to detract from the fact that she still has that 1 foot in girlhood. So I think Sadie really embodied that so well. Dylan O'Brien did not, sorry Madeline, my co-host on my podcast, Evolution of a Snake, go check it out. Dylan O'Brien did not do it for me. It was fine. It was an okay performance. I just didn't get the gravity of the situation. He didn't look old enough as well. That was another thing that I struggled with. And that fight scene that she's talking about and how it was like 92% like improvised, I actually don't like that dialogue because it feels forced. Like, it feels like they're acting, or it feels like they're improvising. It doesn't feel natural to me. I would be so curious to read the scripted dialogue that Taylor wrote. I mean, I assume it's in essence the same, but I would love to just, you know, I want the canon to be as fleshed out and fruitful as possible. So we got to get those documents and send them to the Smithsonian ASAP.
You know, for me, when I was watching, I've seen this short film many times now, and what I really got from it is that she does not feel seen.
Yes.
In that relationship, and she's trying to tell him about an instance where she did not feel seen in the company of his friends, and he's not really getting it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's such a powerful moment because they're so intimate and yet so far.
I'm just gonna take a moment to comment on the fact that Taylor is an excellent active listener. Like, look at her body language. She's leaning in, she's making intense, prolonged eye contact, she's nodding in agreement, she's giving signals that she's listening and understanding what he's saying, and she's doing this on a stage in front of a group of people with the full knowledge that everybody's gonna be recording this on their phone. So there's something about this. She's poised and trained in a way that comes across very naturally, and I think that, you know, if I were sitting in that room, I would feel as though she was having the conversation with me. And, you know, that's just the power of Taylor Swift, baby.
I think that's a really amazing takeaway because I've always been very fascinated. And one of the reasons I wanted to make a short film and not a music video for this song is because I've been fascinated with the dynamic of the age of the character that Sadie's playing and what a precarious age that is when you are, you could fit back at your family home, sort of, but you sort of don't. You could fit in an adult's cultivated apartment where they have like a French press and they have all the things that adults have, but you kind of don't. So you kind of fit everywhere, but you kind of fit nowhere. And I think that plays into a little bit of where she's coming from. And I have to credit Dylan too with the fact that I know that
I want to take a second and comment on that feeling that she's talking about. It is interesting to me, again, that like she's finding all these different ways to relitigate the past, or maybe not to relitigate it, but to bring it up again and to mention it and to color it in and to add some perspective and some wisdom to it by doing it under the veil of like this character. You know, this stand-in for me, basically, in the film. This character or this protagonist in folklore that I'm, you know, writing about. I think that it's really freeing for her to be able to be vulnerable, even still when she's, like, kind of giving a little bit of protective and healthy distance, so no one can accuse her of being overly indulgent with her own feelings anymore. But I'm curious as to why she's getting stuck on the age gap a lot. That seems to be something that is playing on her mind over and over. And I think there's definitely a contemporary conversation about that going on as we speak. And it seems to have hit her in a wounded spot that maybe has not healed quite totally yet. That period of your life, like between 20 and 22, like you're already kind of, like she said, half in and half out of things. But usually you don't have the kind of like wealth and fame and power that Taylor had at that age to kind of hasten up the process and facilitate you feeling that you might be able to have the tools to approach life to its fullest right off the bat just because you have everything available that you could possibly need. Most people are still kind of like reliant on their parents somehow, or are still in school, or are working while they're in school and have a bunch of other kind of like preoccupations that don't allow them to be as free or as close to a bigger, a more adult, more cultivated life, as she keeps mentioning over and over. Cultivated is an interesting word that she's using. I think that that's super interesting, and it seems that it damaged her quite a lot to have been in this situation where she felt that she was less than. The interviewer doesn't quite have it right. I think it's not about feeling seen, it's about feeling equal to and on par with her partner, which I don't think she felt at all.
he makes some charming points, and he does it in a really, really, like, I don't know, just the way that they both played it, I was just blown away.
It's beautiful, because I'm sure so many people relate to it as well, because charismatic, problematic, definition of a boyfriend, maybe?
An ex-boyfriend.
Okay, an ex-boyfriend.
He's like, don't slander my mans, don't slander my wax figure.
How far do I want to go with that? But,
Zero.
Zero. That's
Nowhere.
You mentioned music videos, and I do want to go back. So, because before you directed this film, you began to have increasing visual input into the making of your music videos. Getting into the creativity of the music videos as opposed to just being on camera. The collaborators, you've worked with a couple of directors quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious to know what that process was like for you to get more and more creative input and control ultimately into your videos.
Yeah, it was a baby steps process. It wasn't like I woke up one day and I was like, you know what I want to do? Direct. Like it just that was never something that I was programmed to say to myself because I didn't go to film school. I've been on the set of 60 plus music videos, and I've learned a lot from that process because I've always got my eyes and ears open, and I'm always looking at shots and thinking, I like that one, I don't like that, why and why not? I like that lighting, I don't like that light, why and why not? You know, and so you kind of are learning based on your experience, but I had a really, really close creative relationship with Joseph Kahn, who's just like a legend.
Cricket. Joseph Kahn has me blocked on Twitter.
He did Toxic by Britney Spears, which is like, just to like give you an example of what we're dealing with. And we made several music videos, and we got to the point where I'd call him up and I'd be like, okay, wrote this song called Look What You Made Me Do. I want to come out of the ground as a zombie.
I told you, did I not just say like 20 minutes ago that Look What You Made Me Do was a visual song, was a song she wrote and had a visual in mind for? I'm an oracle.
We're seeing my hand out of the ground and then I'm dead. And then I'm in a bathtub of diamonds and then there's a mountain of me's trying to kill the current me. And he'd be on the phone and be like, yeah, I know exactly what we're doing. Okay, amazing.
To be fair, Joseph Kahn really took direction from her well, and I think any of the music videos of his that I'm not really a fan of has more to do with her concept rather than his execution. For all of his faults, like, he is very good at executing that kind of like action movie, high budget CGI stuff that defined a lot of the music videos in the Reputation era.
And so like having that relationship where like essentially it got to the point where I was sort of starting to write the treatments to the videos, and I then decided it might be really cool to co-direct and to step into that role. And so, you know, I got to co-direct a few videos with incredible collaborators, and I learned...
I'm pretty sure one of those videos was The Man. Anyway.
What it was like to start, you know, writing in-depth treatments and shot listing and really leaning into it. But when I did it on my own, that was when I really really learned everything.
Yeah. Because you have to, I guess.
You have to, and it was so surprising to me because I didn't really want to turn back after that. I just had so much fun. The first video I directed on my own was a video called The Man.
No, girls, don't be cheering for that. Don't lie. Don't lie.
I prosthetically turned into a dude for the whole video. So first video I ever directed on my own. So if you can imagine,
and it sucked.
Me trying to direct child actors.
Why? I mean, the fact that she kept going after that is testament to the resilience and strength of her will.
While I'm dressed prosthetically as a man, I've got like prosthetic, like rubber, whatever they put on you, on my face, and I'm trying to like talk to little kids about what their action is, and they know something's not quite right, and their mom told them that this is Taylor Swift, but they don't really understand how that could be possible.
You have a beard.
It was honestly like, it was incredible. The experience was so wild and wonderful, and I got to work with the incredible Rodrigo. So that happened, and then the pandemic happened, and I ended up directing in the middle of the, you know, the sourdough early phase of the pandemic. This video called Cardigan, and then I did another one for a song called Willow, and that was when I thought, you know, I feel like I could do more. I feel like I'm ready for more. And so that was when I decided to make the short film for All Too Well.
And then the Bad Blood video is all like futuristic action movie.
Yeah, it's, you know, the espionage. That's a phone call with me and Joseph Kahn.
And that phone call was, I want to kill Katy Perry live on cam. That's what that phone call was. The look of panic on her face when he brought up the Bad Blood music video. She was like, what are you gonna say about it?
What if Selena kicks me out a window and tries to kill me, but I don't die, and then I go to spy school and they all teach me how to fight? All the decisions that you make, it's such a beautifully collaborative process. You make decisions, you know, based on your idea as to how you want it to feel, how you want it to look, and then you bring on people you trust. Like, I trust Rena Yang, our DP, implicitly. I absolutely was so lucky to get to work with her, and brought her on early on and showed her my endless mood boards and my references and what I was looking for in terms of lighting and color and texture. And it was pretty apparent that we both wanted to shoot on 35mm.
Okay, I'm gonna pause for a second to say that I think something important here to note is like how collaborative Taylor is. And I think that this is really rare for an artist of her size and her magnitude because, you know, people get territorial over their creative concepts, and a lot of times bigger artists start creating in silos. They create music that is not in conversation with other people outside of their immediate circle, yes men, some might call them. And one of Taylor's strengths, I feel, is that she's really willing to take a note from anywhere, and she will work with just about anyone who can prove that they have something valuable to add to a project. This is kind of evident in the fact that she's kept her songwriting circle of co-writers diverse but small, very small, but the producers that she works with do very different things, and I'm curious to see like how this will progress with her visual career, if she continues to direct, if that's something that she's interested in doing. I love to see how willing she is to give credit where credit is due as well, to acknowledge all the different people that are involved in the making of some, how she's able to name them off the top of her head. She doesn't have to go back and consult anything or fabricate a relationship that wasn't there. At the end of the day, she's a people person, and I think that's what helps her be such a great collaborative artist that has fruitful and successful creative partnerships.
Sadie plays a character named Her. I wanted her apartment.
A character named Her.
To be her. I wanted it to look like who she is. And I wanted the same.
So why didn't we just film in the Nashville condo, huh?
I wanted the same for his space. You know, clean and cool and minimalist and mature and sophisticated and elegant and sexy.
Okay, so Jake Gyllenhaal is cool and clean and mature and sophisticated and elegant and sexy. Okay, noted. Thank you. If I was Joe Alwyn, I'd be sending a text.
I want to ask you about casting Dylan O'Brien and Sadie Sink, and not just each individual actor, but the two of them together. That's important too.
Yes. I don't know if it was a decision. It was what my heart needed for this film. It was a very instinctual decision based on having watched their performances. If I had to assign analytical thought to it, I would say I had never seen either one of them play roles like this before. And I'd seen them just ace anything that was put in front of them, and I just thought, I wonder if Sadie Sink wants to play a romantic lead. I know I haven't seen it yet. I think she's at that perfect point in her career where she could, I mean, like, I think she could absolutely, as the kids would say, eat this up.
Yes.
As the kids would say, eat this up. She's a legend now. Come on now. She is the moment.
You know, and basically with Dylan, it was that charisma that I'd seen his films, and I'd seen him, I mean, even just him
Okay, so you have a crush on Dylan O'Brien. Noted.
Doing an interview, you can see that he's got this just like, you know, this dangerous charm. Like him as a person, he's not a dangerous, but he's dangerously charming, and that he's just like, that is a power that he has. And so I was looking, I also just, when I write, I really gravitate towards, you know, looking up to writer-directors, because that's the way that I can make sense of writing, and then knowing what shots I want and directing, if I've written it. And then when I was writing it, I just was writing Sadie. Like, I wasn't thinking of any other actress or thinking of a generic, beautiful, wide-eyed young person. I was writing it for Sadie, and if she would have said no, I just don't know if I would have made the film, honestly.
Oh.
Yeah, it's true. It's the...
Who could say no to you?
It's true. And I also just really, really wanted them both to say yes, because I know we have to compromise in life, but I didn't have a backup plan, and I didn't want to compromise.
As if either of those people would have said no to her. Please, come on now.
I was a first-time short film director, and I couldn't believe that they wanted to do it. I still can't believe that anybody wanted to do this with me. I'm so happy about it.
Okay. Calm down. I love my humble queen, but let's not be a delusional queen. Anyone in the world would jump to be in a Taylor Swift production. I mean, come on, even if it wasn't good, just the fact that she was sponsoring it, creating it, involved in it, was gonna be promoting it, I mean, it was gonna be major. Who would say no? I mean, I can think of like 5 people, but she wouldn't be casting them in anything anyway.
Well, you delivered, right?
Thank you for saying that.
That's all you need. Did you screen test them together or rehearse with them together?
No,
Like,
no,
none of
no.
that?
I texted Dylan the longest text you've ever seen. Like it was when I read it back, I was like, that was too much. And straight up, like, reached out to Sadie's team, and we're just like, we want to make something. You know, I think was it a text or a call? Long text and then a call. It was, you know, I was just like, please, 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 please. Like, I wasn't trying to be cool at all.
No chill.
I was like, I promise, no one will work harder to make this good than me. Like, I don't know if I went that far, but I was just, I mean, they were amazing. They didn't need to be convinced in a way that I was able to pick up on. So I was so happy, because you want to make things with people who are excited to make things with you. I don't really do that well with people who are like, I'm not sure about you, prove it. Like, okay, I will, but that's not as fun.
So true. Oh my God, humble queen. Taylor is so funny, and she's so droll and dry and sarcastic. And someone tweeted at me and asked me, is this kind of what it's like being at a secret session with her? And yes, this is what it's like. She's very conspirational. She's very off the cuff. She's a funny gal.
Like, if I have to do it, I will prove it. But it would be so much better if you just really wanted to make stuff with us. And so that's what we were lucky enough to have.
All of the evolution we've been talking about, from beginning to contribute to and collaborate.
The evolution of a snake, perhaps?
Collaborate on music videos to making your own short films, and this one. Particularly recently, it's coincided with you taking back control of your music.
Yeah.
Which we've all been following.
Slay.
I really appreciate you saying that. But if you're new to this saga,
no one in that room is new to this saga.
What I was referencing is that basically, I started out on an indie record label I signed when I was a teenager, and I had always had the hope, desire, and dream of buying back my master recordings for my first 6 albums when it came time to, when my record deal was fulfilled. When my deal was done, that didn't happen. My music was all sold to an outside party. And
they're saying boo, and she's like, shut up. Shut up, you idiots. Don't embarrass me. We're in public. Behave. I
came out of that and said to myself, if I made that music the first time, I can make it a second time. And it was so
but where's Speak
exciting, honestly, to get to do something that I haven't really seen done in the music industry in this particular way. That is so nice. That is.
He's so right, though. Stroke of genius. Like, putting the Taylor Swift fandom of me aside, this is truly a revolutionary and exciting way for artists to take back ownership of their own catalogs. Record contracts are so predatory in nature. There are so many artists that came out in droves after Taylor started speaking up about stuff like this, saying that they are in similarly binding situations and they have very little means to make steps towards owning their own records. Some of them are even in situations where they owe their record labels money, and there is just no hope of them ever owning their masters if they can't even recoup the costs that were sunk into creating the records in the first place. So the fact that Taylor is doing this, and in such a creative way with the vault tracks and, you know, all of this like promotional stuff that she's been able to do with it, but what she's been able to do with it symbolically is, I think, even more important than the artistic stroke of taking it back for herself.
And so basically we treat them like they're big releases. Like we do a whole album, we redo the entire photo shoot. You know, we make music videos, and sometimes we make a short film. And so it's really been, honestly, insanely beautiful, because you have, like, you know, my friend's daughter is like 12, and her friends were saying like, oh, like we just, we love this new Taylor Swift song that just came out called You Belong With Me. And I was like, who's gonna tell her? No, like, don't tell her.
That is so traumatic to me. I can't. It's like when I get those YouTube comments of people being like, I'm in middle school, or I just got one today that was like, I was 1 when Fearless was born. Like, I can't do it.
That's a really old song that came out in like, what, like 2008 or something. So it's really been an amazing opportunity to revisit my old music, make exact copies of the old music. And what I also do now is there were a lot of songs that I wrote that didn't end up on the album. So we call those songs from the vault tracks. So I record them, I put them out. So it's been really wonderful, and it's only been possible because the fans actually want this to happen. I can't believe that too. Like, that's amazing.
Lucky us.
You guys have been so wonderful about it. But basically, this song, All Too Well, the 10-minute version, has a very long story. It is a story about as long as the song, but I'll try to make it shorter. This was a song that originally was released on an album called Red in 2012. Thank you so much. You guys are great. And it was a song that I loved so much, but it was never chosen by, an A&R team in a conference room as being a single.
Boo.
Nobody saw the potential in it except for the fans, who loved it so much.
We know
they
what's
made
up.
it sort of their favorite song on that album. For me, the song was so tough because it was about something that at that point was very current for me. I would have a really hard time performing it at the time. I had to really force myself to focus on other things to try to get through it during tour. So there was...
Wow, that's so interesting to me. So it was still, I wonder what the turning point was when it started to feel like she was taking it back, because I think she said she started talking about All Too Well and what had happened with it around the Grammys. I think that might have been the turning point, but I can't be 100% sure. So she was pretty much miserable throughout the Red Tour performing it. That's good to know. That's some good tea.
I needed 10 years of sort of retrospect in order to know what I would even make to tell a version of that story visually. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that with some crazy stroke of...
I just realized that in a month, Red is going to be 10 years old. I just don't know what to do with that information. I really don't. That album was so pivotal and so seminal in my life, and the fact that there's been a decade between its release and where we are now, and we're just still, still, the Red content still keeps giving. The Red era is never over. Here we are today, still receiving more and more juice. So, I'm overwhelmed by that.
All these different twists of fate. Can't believe it.
Do you make a connection between coming to the point where you can create your own images and owning your own music? What's the connection?
I think it's very connected, and not in a way that was conscious, but I think in a way where, hopefully the more years you live, the more things you learn, and you hope that you get braver as time goes on. And I've been very lucky to, when I've taken these baby steps creatively, I've been very lucky to have people go no, go further, it's great, keep going, it's, and I think I would have really tried to keep expanding creatively even if I had been squashed the first time I tried to make something. But it was really beautiful that we're in a place where...
Something interesting to point out here is that, even though Taylor has faced internal resistance from, A&R record people or people within the label, ultimately, she has really been the agent of her own fate most of the time, and she is not met with much resistance when she wants to try something new. I mean, there was some sort of battle between her and the label when it came to doing 1989, but I think that when it comes to having creative control, we can see pretty consistently throughout her career that she has had the chance to have, if not final say, almost 99.9% say in whatever is kind of coming through and going out of her as a public figure. And I think that that definitely allows her to be confident and to be brave and to make decisions like this and to kind of circle back to her younger self and continue to feel empowered and emboldened to make creative decisions. And like she said, she had a lot of people around her encouraging her throughout her time, telling her that she could do it, she could go further. I think that that is a unique experience for women in the music industry. A lot of comparable pop stars of her influence and her size are not given the free reign that she's given in order to create their music. So that's definitely an interesting thing to note and continue coming back to as we watch this.
And I just feel really grateful. Like, you think about people like Nora Ephron, who, you know,
Legend.
there's people who paved the path, and then there's like Nora Ephron, like in the forest with a machete, just like hacking, like to where the path will be paved. And I think about writer-directors like that who inspired the writer-directors who inspired me. It's like a
Nora Ephron is a great example and a parallel for Taylor to kind of live up to if that's the direction that she's hoping to take. I'm curious to see where she's going to go with the visual side of things from here. I don't think she's going to be pivoting her main focus away from music anytime soon, if Midnights is any indication of that. But I can see a world in which she may want to do a feature film at some point. Now, the quality of that is going to be completely up to the power of her pen. All too well, when she mentions like writing the treatment and stuff, there wasn't really any dialogue, especially, you know, the dialogue that was in it wasn't scripted. So I would be super curious to see if she could kind of harness the spirit of Nora Ephron, who, if you're not familiar with her, was a writer-director who did a lot of incredible romantic comedies throughout the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s. She is known for revitalizing the genre. One of my favorite movies of hers is Sleepless in Seattle, and she has a lot of the same kind of themes and tropes that Taylor has in her work. These ideas of destiny and fate and timing and twin flames. These are all kind of things that are deeply embedded in Taylor's brain as a writer. So I love that she's drawing a parallel between her and Nora Ephron, who sadly is no longer with us, but remains a huge inspiration to her, clearly.
I think about people like that all the time.
Mm-hmm. I want to go to actually a question we have from somebody on Twitter. We got a few questions from social media.
Love
her trying to hide the absolute horror of being asked a question from Twitter.
Because it's related. This is at Long Story Swift on Twitter.
Excellent.
And they ask, right? Pretty
Solid.
good handle, yeah. I loved your shout out to female directors at the VMAs. Are there any female directors in particular that inspired your vision for this film?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, Nora Ephron as a writer-director.
Okay, yeah.
I love Chloe Zhao. I love Greta Gerwig. I love Lena Dunham.
Oh my god, the absolute silence in the audience when she said Lena Dunham. Oh my god. You guys are so pathetic. Honestly, like, Lena Dunham is an incredibly talented writer and director. Like, say what you want about her. She seems to have this, like, she seems to have the absolute stench of, like, her cancellation following her everywhere. But, like, there is no denying that Lena Dunham is an extremely talented writer and director. She's very funny. She's a very unique perspective. And it totally makes sense that Taylor would be inspired by her.
Lena is always there for me if I have a question, and just such a good friend.
And she's got a new film here at the
Yes,
festival
she
as well.
does!
Oh my god, is this the first, like, Taylor public Lena announce? Is this the first, like, Taylor public Lena address since Lena, like, really went down with the ship? This is interesting to me.
It's so good. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And a nice departure for her as well.
Yes.
It's set way, way in the past, and it's also hilarious.
It's one of my favorite things she's ever done,
Yes.
so go see it.
Another
Besties.
question. Also from Twitter, from @WildflowerHoax. And they're asking, tell us about the lighting in All Too Well, the short film. What was the significance and the contrast between warm and cold? Talk a little bit about this.
It's really good to be asked.
Okay, did they not already address this question earlier? Why is he asking questions that he himself has already asked?
This question.
And this person says, I've seen dozens of theories, but would love to hear the intent behind it.
So,
Theories.
I really wanted
Nonsense.
this. I had a few overarching goals with the lighting and, you know, just sort of the coloring and everything. I really wanted this short film to feel like autumn. And not the entire time you're watching it, but in your memory. I referenced the film Love Story from like 1970 earlier, and when I think of that film, I think of autumn. I just do.
Right.
And so I was trying to, I think, establish that in the earlier parts of the short film. And like when they're falling in love, I wanted that to feel warmer. And when we're in his world, his apartment, I wanted it to feel cooler. And then when Sadie goes into her periods of despair and reeling, I wanted her world to become cooler. And then
Okay,
in
this
the
is
end,
like
when we see her grown up, I wanted it to
bright,
be a bit
happy,
of a
dark,
combination
sad,
of
you know?
both. almost to symbolize that she is still herself, but she has been changed by this experience. And I wanted that to make us both happy and sad at the same time. But I think
I like that little bit at the end. That's interesting.
When you think about the worlds that you're creating, like we were working within the framework of chapters. We had this amazing typography studio called Fraser Mugridge do these bespoke chapter title cards, and those were there because I wanted you to realize in the end that Sadie had been, that these are chapters of Sadie's character's book. So when you see the chapters like "Are You Real?" and the first crack in the glass, you realize
the chapter names are so bad. Are You Real?
This is her reflecting back, and these are chapters of her book, and these are the things that you're seeing taking place that you would read about in the book that she was writing. So we wanted there to be sort of like we wanted her to seem a little bit changed in the end, even with the set design. The house where she lives in the end looks a little bit more like where he lived than where she was before.
So she has actually taken something from that relationship.
Yeah, good and bad.
Yeah.
Interesting. You know, we hear a lot about the bad things that Taylor has taken from her relationship with a certain somebody, but the good things going forward, I mean, Taylor has name-checked a lot of very avant-garde, cool directors throughout this. I betcha when she was dating this guy, she would not have been able to name-check those people, but post, she definitely has. So I think that cultivated, again, that word kept coming up, that he was cultivated and she felt like she wasn't, or that she was lesser than or not equal to. And I think that her pursuit of creativity beyond just being a pop star and not maybe being taken seriously as more than like a teen idol is for sure coming out here. And that's something I think she took away from that relationship. Be more committed and focused on your art, developing it, sharpening it, and making it something to be taken seriously.
There's another element in the film that there are a lot of theories about, which is that red scarf.
Yeah.
Yes.
What can you tell us about the red scarf? Because there must have been a lot of decisions that went into exactly
what can I tell you is the question.
Did you get it back?
Basically, stop it.
She literally is like, not in public, you little rats, you swines. You're gonna get the cane when I get home.
Stop it. Basically, the scarf is a metaphor, and we turned it red because red is a very important color in this album, which is called Red.
The scarf was not red, fun fact. It was not. It was like gray and black.
I could see it being a little bit, you know, I don't always see myself telling stories about extreme guttural heartbreak at your most formative age that really sort of, you know, debilitates you emotionally for years, and then you have to like develop the scar tissue in order to move on with your life.
Wow, girl.
And then like, you know,
trauma
lift your
dumping
way
on the
to your
audience.
typewriter and write a novel about it because you're still, you know.
Yeah, you can't keep doing that.
No.
It's going to be painful.
I think I've done that.
Yeah.
So I would love to. I mean, I'd love to keep taking baby steps forward, and I think that I'm at a place now where like the next baby step is like not a baby step. It would be committing to making a film, and I feel like I would just absolutely love for the right opportunity to arise, because I absolutely adore telling stories this way.
I knew that she wanted to do this. As soon as she said that she wanted to do a short film, I knew the girl wanted to get into a movie. Now, the only scenario that I could maybe see her getting an Oscar for something that wasn't an all too well short film situation would be for original screenplay. If she became the Nora Ephron of her generation and she revived the romantic comedy genre, the rom-com genre really boomed in the 80s and carried on all the way through to the early 2000s, and then it just kind of died. It's not an extremely profitable genre anymore. It's not a blockbuster. Original IP ventures, you know, where they create something new and fund projects, tends to go to things like Marvel or DC or like action movies. And, you know, the rom-com is truly a lost art. And do I think that Taylor Swift could revitalize it? with the right filmmaking and writing partners, I think she maybe could. I would be really excited to see that. But again, I think that she rightfully, with writing, is being very discerning at what she appears in. If you want her to read a line or two, get a acting cameo, she'll do it for free. Clearly she will do anything and go anywhere to try and become an actress, but
it would be such a privilege and an honor. And I also just do want to say that I'm aware of the fact that I'm in an incredibly privileged place to have gotten to finance this short film independently, because when we talk about female filmmakers, I am one of them, but I also realize that there are people who are working so hard to get financing and to get any type of budget together to make the productions that they and the projects that they want to make. So I honestly like bow down and tip my hat to those female filmmakers.
That's very interesting. She almost never kind of approaches her privilege head on, unprompted. But I think, girl, we could be putting our money where our mouth is, and we could start an independent financing venture where we finance other young female filmmakers, or perhaps we use our behind the scenes connections to get up and comers, not people who are already in the industry, into this world. I could see her doing something like that for sure in the future. We'd love to see it, rather than just bowing down and tipping your hat to the filmmakers. Maybe putting that colossal access to resource that you have to good use, given that you've benefited so much from the tutelage of other people's knowledge and having other people come in and encourage you. It would be great to see her kind of continue the feedback loop there.
I really I have a lot of bandwidth to put into creative things, and I get exhausted by things in life, but they're never creative things. I love making stuff, and I'm like, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've just been like, I just love making stuff. I just want to never do anything but make stuff. So
It's so true, and I keep saying this, but Taylor has been extremely prolific with her output in the last 5 or 6 years. She has this generative spirit that really is not being tampered with. And I'm so curious to see where we're gonna go post Folklore and Evermore, because she keeps taking turns, and she's really being led by this internal compass of wanting to try new things without alienating the core audience that is steering her right so far, while also kind of, introducing new themes, new writers, new collaborators into the fold. So I'm super excited to see where this is gonna go, and I'm so happy to hear that she's still in that generative space.
Just hope that that keeps going. I am so lucky to be supported by kind, generous, nice, thoughtful people who seem to care about stuff I make. I just hope that that keeps going. I'm gonna keep working hard, trying my best, all of that. And I would absolutely love to expand in terms of filmmaking and storytelling, and keep, it's a natural extension of my writing. I really feel that, and as long as I can keep doing all the natural extensions of my writing, doing shows is a natural extension of my writing. I love that too. I want to do all the things.
All right, Swifties, so that's it. That is the end of that conversation. I think we got a lot of cool insight into where she's at creatively. In terms of where we're gonna go with Midnights from here, I'm really not sure. I do not know what the future holds. I think we can definitely expect a heavy visual element to this, and I think it's going to be very stylized, and it's going to have a very filmmaker-y feel to whatever visuals that we get. I'm already getting that sense from the promo pics from this film festival, and also from the album shoot. I mean, there's bright things on the horizon, okay? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.